I would tell my younger self to start this sooner, to start it coming out of college, to first don't despise small beginnings. At the end of the day, business will always be business. We're in an industry where the art is a hard thing first. The reality is you want to be able to make a profit. It's a business. So there is a lot of overhead when you open these facilities, but I will say once you put the infrastructures in place, you will see a return on your investment, and a great one at that. It's just a matter of staying the course. As a provider, understanding the resources available to you or finding them. Because you can't just lay there and be like, oh, the referrals are going to land at my door. That is not happening. So the beauty in the assisted living community is that you don't even have the same staffing requirements that group homes have. It is definitely a necessity, and it will be very helpful so that we can have more funds available so that individuals can first come off the wait list. I believe sources like that is needed more regularly than not, because having $500,000 or an additional $100,000 added to their budget but other than that, I'd rather be quiet in the back of the room, observing, organizing, making sure everybody's having a good time, and that's it. That's me.
You and me both. But the reason why we're here having this conversation today was because of our introduction into the assisted living residential support group home space, right? It's this big, broad umbrella that I feel like is misunderstood at best in the minds of many. I found that, people have a general understanding of assisted living in the terms of memory care and elder support. And, when you look at things like the baby boomer generation coming upon retirement age and how participation in the workforce is still very strong amongst that group presently, there is going to be an inevitable tidal wave of support necessary for these members of our community. And that is what a lot of people are familiar with when it comes to residential assisted living, when it comes to group home care. But there are so many other patient populations that need service. Can you talk about some of those different patient populations?
That's a really good question, Joshua. I'll do my best to unpack that. What I'm realizing is that each disability type, if you will, have an array of services. But what it depends on is their lobbyists that affords them the opportunity to have the funding to get the additional services and supports that they need. So there are specialties like people that serve individuals that have challenges with their vision, people that serve individuals that may be veterans, or if they're part of the long-term care umbrella, that type of funding, because it's really the funding source is how we kind of get our various populations, and then they qualify per their disability, whether it's diagnosed as 1 or 2, or there's a medical situation that arises, or upon birth that makes them eligible for the different categories. So it really depends on what happens to that individual, when it happened, and the funding that's available to them.
Okay. And funding is a big, big piece. I know that here in the state of Florida, we have yet to accept the Medicaid expansion passed in the Affordable Care Act under the Obama administration. And I want to say there's currently 6. We are one of 6 states that have yet to accept that funding. I think that we had a ballot initiative that was proposed last year that was pulled off of the ballot. There's no information on when that may return. What do you think those additional funds could do to drive changes in healthcare outcomes and in better stabilizing and supporting the provider community in helping families on the Medicaid waiver and just being able to do more in the state?
I think you pose the question and answer it at the same time. It is definitely a necessity, and it will be very helpful so that we can have more funds available so that individuals can first come off the wait list. Secondly, we could put supports both by way of family members, because there's a CDC funding, or directly through the waiver where there's paid supports for providers that are contracting and hiring employees to go into the various homes and or out in the community with the individuals we serve. So those additional dollars will allow us to afford to continue doing that. Because as you know, the inflation as it relates to insurances, just to insure our businesses nowadays. The insurance companies are not writing policies in the state of Florida. And when they write a policy, it's significantly expensive. It's very costly. And then while we're on that, because I just have to go down that rabbit hole. So, for example, it used to be like purchasing or getting insurance for your vehicle, where you could go same day, next day, you have coverage. That is no longer the case in the state of Florida if you have a licensed facility. There are several applications that you'll probably have to complete, clarify some questions, and then there's a deposit, and then there's probably a payment before you even see your policy. That's the honest truth. That's what we're witnessing now in the state of Florida. So those additional funds will help the providers that are expanding so that they can maintain their operations and continue to grow, because we need more facilities and or staff to support the populations. Then there's additional expenses related with the increases in wages. The cost of living is going up, so the average provider has to receive, meaning direct care staff, when I say provider, they have to receive a minimum of $15 an hour in the state of Florida. And $15 an hour doesn't go very far nowadays. So it used to be that was an assistant manager's pay back in the day. But presently, that's where direct care professionals or providers are starting. And managers are now looking at upwards of $20, $25 an hour at a minimum to provide the said services, plus bonuses. And so the additional funds are necessary so that we can maintain our businesses. Like I mentioned before, from insurance to staffing. And then outside of that, there's these training requirements. So you have to pay for those set trainings, most of which is offered through the Agency for Persons with Disability, the TRAIN site, but there's others that are not, like first aid CPR, and there's another training that is not paid through, is not through training as well. Like if you have behavior focus or certain other certifications, you will have to get behavioral services certification outside of that. And those are additional fees, medication administration and the validation of such. So it's very critical to have enough money in the budget to pay for trainings, sustain your operations, and if you want to have the ability to expand. But right now, providers are just barely breaking even, is what I'm witnessing in the industry. Okay,
so it sounds like a lot of struggle, a lot of difficulty. You've been in the industry for over 20 years. I'm
not telling my age. But I've been around, though. Okay. Yes. Okay. That's safe to say that.
If the younger you who graduated with a bachelor's degree in criminal science, am I correct?
Criminology,
my apologies.
It's okay.
We're looking to get into this field. One, I want to understand the story of how one goes from a criminology undergraduate degree to focusing on individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and serving that population to bring change and drive, positive health outcomes. How does that happen? And two, given all of what you know now with the state of affairs in the industry, how would you counsel your earlier self on the pathway forward to, operating a sustainable, successful business in this environment?
So I'll start with the second question because it's close to my heart right now. I would tell my younger self to start it sooner, to start it coming out of college. I had my bachelor's degree. A particular industry is not required in terms of the type of degree you have, but it's good to have so you can have that basic knowledge. And I would tell myself to go ahead and start saving my money, find a partner that is willing to invest, or a partner that's genuinely interested in starting a business together, and start it much sooner, because the rules and regulations have changed significantly over the years. So if I would have had a structure in place already, it's just a matter of modifying what is required for the day-to-day operations and the reporting requirements and the wave of the quality assurance pieces from Delmarva to Clarent, that's currently contracted with the Agency for Healthcare Administration and provides oversight of our compliance requirements. So it would have been like a seamless transition, like, okay, so I'm familiar with this and let me just do that. Versus present day, I would like to give my facility as an example. After we had a grand opening this summer, by the fall, new regulations came down and we had T-minus 3 weeks to get it into compliance. And then we've recently received an extension of that, and now we have until November 1st. So now I'm like opening my doors, trying to, as they would say, market to bring in clients, and then having to shift gears and learn the new compliance requirements all at the same time. So unless you have staff that are very flexible, or if you have a lot of flexibility in your schedule, it will be much more of a challenge if you don't have those two pieces in place. I will tell my younger self to just step out on faith and just do it, you know. To answer your first question, I went to Florida State University because it was number 3 in the nation at that time for the criminology program. And I wanted to be an agent. And my father said, absolutely not, after I got almost to the finish line. So I decided, you know what, then I'm going to go in the Army. I'm going to the military. And then my father said, absolutely not, again. And I was raised in a household and an era where the parents, whatever they said, had to wait. You know, it was not a whole lot of back talking, and you definitely didn't have you were never too grown, as they would say, right? And so because my father protested, I graduated and I came home and I was overqualified. So it was difficult for me to get a job when I graduated from Florida State. And however, they were piloting the privatization of foster care in Manatee County. So I was like, oh, that'd be interesting. And I interviewed and I got the job. The pilot didn't go well. So as you can see, foster care is still not privatized at this time. And then because it didn't go well, I was back in the job market again. And there was an opportunity where Easter Seals Mark, they were one big, large organization in Manatee County, my hometown. And they needed a supervisor of their personal supports program. And I was like, I've always been a leader. You know, I grew up in the household that we had a family business. So I did payroll and everything else before I could drive. So I've always been in administrative leadership type of capacities, even through high school. I was vice president of my class for multiple years, and just involved in my community, and being raised by a pastor. I used to be over the choir, don't ask me to sing, the youth choir, and then used to teach Sunday school, right? So the leadership was already in me. Yeah. So once I had the opportunity to showcase that as the supervisor of personal supports, I was like, I like this. And then the population was amazing. Individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities, no 2 days are the same. No 2 days are the same. And to see them and to see their abilities and to work with staff that's equally dedicated to understanding and helping them identify those abilities, fostering and working towards a common goal, it was priceless. So I was like, this is it for me. I know I have my criminology degree, my minor in juvenile justice, because I really want to work with at-risk youth, since my father wouldn't let me be an agent or go into the military. So what I learned is, and again, a lot of, not to offend our population, but a number of them have challenging behaviors. So I was basically putting my degree to work. And working closely with staff, helping them navigate the different behaviors that the clients will have. Even if they lived on their own, they would still have challenges with understanding the rules and regulations of being out in the community and living out amongst people that are non-disabled. So that was a training in of itself. So that's how I fell in love with the industry. And then the organization Easter Seals Mark, they became two separate organizations. So I was like, okay, so which one do I choose? And I was like, I just didn't want to be in the mix of the drama, because as you can imagine, it was challenging, right? We had our pre-existing relationships with our supervisors and stuff, and then they had to make tough decisions too. And so it just kind of went downstream. So I was recruited by a gentleman that had a business relationship with a APD provider. and I became the director of her non-residential support services program. So that's like an adult day training center without a physical brick and mortar setting, basically. It's essentially the same thing. It's a combination of companion services today and then LSD3, Life Skills Development 3 services. So I would have upwards of, 30 or more clients in the morning and all the supporting staff. We would get together, organize the day specific to their goals, and then they'd be out in the community, come back, and I'm gloving up because they may have urined in the staff car or had some other accidents we won't put on camera and, talk about on camera rather. So we would do what we need to do Monday through Friday and make sure they had a meaningful day activity and really improve their quality of life. I have some of those old photos. So when I reflect on them, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing. So that's how I started in the industry. And then I was recruited by a staff member from the Agency for Persons with Disabilities because when I became the director of non-residential support services for the provider, formerly known as Northwest Care Center, we came up with the model of providing the individuals we serve with work readiness skills training. So we opened a thrift store. And it was very successful. And the individuals that worked in that thrift store had the ability to run the cashier, to do the merchandising, putting the clothes on the hanger, actually being, participating in the sales, and then teaching them budgeting and how to balance the cash register. So it was like a whole production, and they ran it. So I really loved and enjoyed that. And so we bridged into helping those individuals with supported employment services. And it did so well that we were able to get the attention of the local office of APD in the Suncoast region. At that time, Brenda Clark was the support employment liaison. She was presented with an amazing opportunity at the University of South Florida. And she was like, I would like to bring you in for an interview. I think you'll be a good fit. And I was like, okay, that's awesome. And did you say to be over the whole region? So that's kind of how it went. And I came in and met her, and I met some amazing people. I was like, I think I can do that. So that's how I got my first state job and became the support employment liaison for the Suncoast region. And it's still as big as it always has been. It was a little smaller back then, but it was, a fairly large region. And building a rapport with the providers and seeing their dedication and their genuine interest to help the people we serve with getting jobs in the community and being integrated in their communities was amazing. And they had just started a 5-year initiative so that we could have so many individuals out in the community working, and we became the #1 producing region under my tutelage. No, just bragging a little bit. I had to tout just a little bit. But no, we had an amazing team, and we worked really well with the support employment liaison, Dale Zinn at that time, then Marcia DeGrazia, she was a trainer, and then Ann Hendon was also a part of it. So we would put together meeting of the minds on different things that would be really helpful, and we started quarterly meetings with the providers. So all of that played a role in our success. And then I would go out in the community, work with the various interagency councils, pop in and talk to different employers. And so everyone was on board. It took a team to make it successful, and we did that. So that's what led to my career. And fast forwarding in that process, you can only work in a capacity so long, and then, it's time for something different, right? So my next phase, if you will, was to move into, stay with state government, but to move into more of the compliance side. So that's how I got the job at the Agency for Healthcare Administration. And they were piloting statewide Medicaid managed care that is now implemented. So I was privileged to be a part of the piloting team, the implementation team, and then the contractor of the first behavioral health plan that they had here in the state of Florida, at that time known as Magellan. So in my capacity, I had the opportunity to work with the data management team and help build out the algorithm to identify individuals that had HIV and AIDS to make sure their needs were met. That's why I was mentioning earlier that it really depends on how the person
when they were diagnosed, what their diagnosis is, all those things intermingled to designate where they need to receive the care.
Correct. And to be behind the scenes and see how the legal team is also involved in defining that. So when our handbooks are promulgated or when we see, amendments to our Florida Administrative Code, it's a production behind the scene. Like they're combing through and they're making sure there's algorithms and or eligibility requirements that's been identified from federal CMS to make sure we're in compliance with that. And then as it trickled down, how can we build that out, and then we implement it. And even before implementation, there's a hearing process that the handbooks go through so that the general public can speak to it and have say in it. They'll take all of those comments into consideration, and then it's implemented, and then you'll see the amended iBudget waiver handbooks. So it's definitely a production behind the scenes, and I was privileged to that. And I did very well in the different capacities with the Agency for Healthcare Administration. And I even had the opportunity to lead a team that currently now has developed the combined, I think it's the 1823, the joint cooperative agreement that's required for everyone that's admitted into assisted living facility. So I led the team to develop that, and our work was acknowledged by the governor and then the secretary at that time. So I'm really humble and grateful for those different exposures with AHCA. And then I was recruited by Gary Hartfield to be his COO of Serenity Village. And that did so amazing. I mean, it was just so amazing that I onboarded March of 2017. We expanded the Adult Day Training Center that by the end of that time, at the end of March 2017. And then he gave us a charge that if we filled both suites at that time, he would buy us a building.
Okay.
And so the team I had at that time was like, we're on it. And that was March. And by the end of that year, I was having a discussion with Gary, and it's like, we're ready. And he was like, ready for what, Like, we're ready for our building, please. He was like, and I'm certain he saw the difference in the revenue, but, seeing is believing. And he came in and we were like busting at the seams with the day program. And he was like, oh my gosh. And then he's looking around and he was like, okay then. And I was like, yeah, we're ready. And he did. He kept his word. So by July that next year, we had our building. He allowed the team to be a part of the process where we would look at some of the different options for the real estate that we may be interested in. And then he made, of course, an executive decision that was most appropriate for the budget at that time. And it's over here on Pinellas Park, a couple of streets over, and it's still in existence because we did so well. Another organization that is bridging into the state of Florida was interested in purchasing his line of business in Pinellas County. So when they did that, then I was forced to reevaluate what I was doing next. And I went into full-time consulting, and now I'm a med waiver provider as well.
That's incredible. That's a robust experience, a robust storyline that I feel like a lot of people can learn from, because we all want to do well while doing well, or do good while doing good, I find. And oftentimes people are inhibited from pursuit of that path because of some of the struggle that they face along the way. Coming from a real estate investing background, there ain't nothing but struggle. I find that, having to deal with subcontractors, contractors, what have you, it can be a very challenging environment just because it's not the most professional, not the most reliable labor force. And you have to deal with that and still make it through to the other side of seeing your vision come to fruition. And so your experience early on with some of the challenges of operating a facility seem to have given you the reassurance in your craft to be able to do it at the higher level that you have in supporting driving change at the state level with the Agency for Healthcare Administration and the Agency for Persons with Disabilities. That's incredible. Can we go back to when you were working with the interagency councils and, informing them about ways they could contribute to supporting the patient population that you serve, because I find that some people are struggling with, getting the help and the resources that they need, and how they can model your experience in creating a cohesive conversation with these different organizations to really drive change.
That's a good question. I think with the interagency councils, what made it successful is because we all had a common goal, different missions, different funding sources, but we had a common goal, which was to enhance the quality of life for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So for the provider community, fast forwarding to now that I sit on the board of Empower Florida, I'm also a new member of the Quality Council that works closely with Clarent, that's again contracted with the Agency for Healthcare Administration for the compliance oversight pieces. What I've learned is everything you just mentioned, there's tons of resources out there, but the providers really don't know where to start to get that information.
We didn't know where to start when we began our journey. We just kind of found the website, signed up, went through the application process, banged our head on the wall a bunch of times, 1,000 times. Luckily, we found out about Empower Florida, where we met, and the group that was there was focusing on patient populations that were different from ours. However, there was still a robust amount of value to be had just in understanding the Clarent process, understanding using iConnect, something that we have yet to be folded into, but it's coming for us.
Yes, it is. Let's say that with a smile.
But we're going to get back to iConnect later, because that's a whole nother headache. But meeting you all, being in that space, it was invaluable, just what we were able to learn and figure out a way forward to, survive. Because you really do just feel like you're thrown out there in the water, and it's hurricanes and just all kinds of turbulence around you. And so, yes, can you speak to some of those resources that are available that people don't know about?
I'd be honored, particularly with Empower Florida. And yes, I'm biased because our purpose is to equip the provider community, whether you're part of the community or interested in becoming a part of it, with information, resources. We post many of our webinars right on the website. They're free, so you can listen in on and be like, is that something I'm genuinely interested in, or am I able to navigate this? And then we put together an annual conference so we can have face-to-face time with the provider community, so that they can see that we do exist. We're not just in a vacuum sitting up there making decisions or trying to influence change, and we're not in the throes with you. Most of us are providers that sit on the board, and we serve some of the tougher populations like behavior focused, intensive behavioral, and or have 20 plus years of industry experience and or political knowledge, so that we're able to navigate how to influence change. So we've now branched into ensuring that we have a lobbyist to help advocate on behalf of our provider community, so that we could identify the gaps that maybe the legislatures don't know. We talk about a budget, but being able to provide the data so that they can understand that it's so real for the provider community, and we want to keep it alive and to try to be proactive in that process, not reactive. In addition to Empower Florida, there are other organizations like the ACRA Florida or FARF, where providers can get involved and get more information about how to sustain within these industries. When it comes to the assisted living facility, the Agency for Healthcare Administration oversees the Medicaid program for the state of Florida, and they license their assisted living facilities and provide that oversight. And then we refer to agencies for persons with disabilities or neighboring agencies as like sister agencies, because they implement and oversee and license other funders, other funding sources related to the original Medicaid services. It just may be falling on the umbrella of a waiver. So to that end, when it comes to the assisted living facilities, there are organizations out there. I'm not as involved. However, I am a core certified individual so that I can have a licensed assisted living facility. So what we've done with Empower Florida, because the founder actually started in the industry with assisted living facilities, so it's been important to him that we kind of married the two. So for this year's conference, after you gave me some feedback, I've already presented to the board. We'll be intentional about having a session related to assisted living facilities and that bridge. Because what I've learned for assisted living facilities, you all have a unique position to accept long-term care funding, placements that maybe from, let's go back to original question, another question you asked me earlier, but like the FACT team have funding associated with the mental health community. And the way the regulation read, it has to be an assisted living facility that's currently licensed and or a family care home where the person resides in the home that can accept those individuals, and you negotiate the rates there. So you can receive that population. You can also receive veterans, and then you can serve individuals that's also an APD waiver. So the beauty in the assisted living community is that you don't even have the same staffing requirements that group homes have, and I point to me because I have a group home that's forthcoming, and so the staffing requirements are far more with the group homes, even though you're serving the same population. I'm still a little biased because I just love all things APD. I just really do. But again, I work for both agencies, but I do like the flexibilities that the Agency for Healthcare Administration offer to their provider community. So we are married in some regard, but there are separate regulations that allow for you to have a few more concessions that an ALF can have versus what a group home can have. So when you talk about resources, it's literally a matter of what I'm finding is that there's these different silos. So going to the various conferences allows you to be introduced to the different organizations so you can garner the information and figure out which one is a good fit for you to be a member of and to be engaged in to get the most information.
And that's what we want to do. We want to bridge the gap between the siloed functions that a lot of these organizations provide. And hearing you speak about what's possible in an assisted living facility setting for, say, veterans, that brings to mind a story of a good friend that we have whose father just passed, unfortunately, and he was a military service veteran, and his aide, his partner, was a veteran as well, and his goal was to utilize that house for care and service of veterans, and his son wants to honor that mission and learn how to, serve that population and, honor his dad's will. And awesome. That is needed information for him to be able to, go along that path and be of service. So thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely.
Because there's so very much out there. It's such a robust community, but it's just penetrating it and figuring out the different pathways to effectiveness that I think we can sometimes struggle with.
I agree. I concur. And I can speak from my most pressing, because it really is pressing experience. I acquired a licensed 10-bed assisted living facility with the ECC designation on it, extended congregate care. But because I am absolutely married to the IDD population, I decided to surrender that license so that I can license it as a group home. As a part of that process is when I learned more details about what the ALF could afford me versus what the group home could, because it's very streamlined when you serve the group home population. However, there are some concessions in regulation where we would just have to submit a request to the regional office for approval for people that are not necessarily deemed APD eligible and get that special approval. So there are some loopholes there, but my point is it wasn't until I was in the midst of actually managing this ALF or managing the transition of a ALF to a group home that I learned all of these pieces. And although I still decided to move forward with licensing it as a group home because I majored in criminology. I have an affinity for those that have behavior challenges or the forensic population. That's just my wheelhouse. And I want to be able to continue along that vein. So that is why I went that route, to create an environment to serve that area of need. And usually with the assisted living population, they're usually memory care, or they're not deemed along the same lines in terms of the level of care needs. And I wasn't interested in dealing with so much medical. I'm more interested in community integration, dealing with dually diagnosed individuals and helping them see that there's other options and how they can have a stable life with their medications, with a good support system around them. And so that's why I went that route with the group home. But I definitely saw the benefits of having an assisted living facility. And I do believe, just like you indicated, that navigating that is a little bit challenging. So I want to be intentional, again, for this year's conference as the board meets, so that we can start bringing some of those resources to the table, because there is a marriage that could happen there, because you really are, it's just unofficial, but we're married in the ways that we can serve different disabilities at our facilities.
Is it Mirari Perez, I believe, is the contact at APD, who is over in the Central Region, at
Central
least.
Region, okay.
Who, is over those, finding out those loopholes, or petitioning the agency for use of bed space for a different patient that may not fall under the designation of 18, or having been diagnosed prior to the age of 18. So you got to know the people to talk to and the questions to ask. And we've been very blessed with a large regional provider in our area whom we received our first patient from, maintaining a quality relationship with them. We've had our one patient for, I want to say, about 6 months, and that patient's been a blessing. It's wonderful to hear and see the smile on not only the patient's face, but the parents, send them photos of them on a walk outside when they've never seen their child outside ever in their adult life, and to just showcase the care and concern that we have for them, and have that be received, and hopefully have an impact on their lives is awesome. But to the point of maintaining relationships and the provider community really being able to support you and help you grow, we had that one regional provider who I mentioned. They contacted us about a first responder who had come to one of their facilities on a call, and was amazed with the work that they do, and asked if they had any bed space, but unfortunately they did not, and that's how they referred our possible second patient to us. And so we're doing the work of trying to help them get on the waiver. The parent has been in crisis for quite some time. They've been waiting to get on the waiver for about 10 years. They don't even know who their representative is anymore. And so we're trying to support them in getting that sorted out, and just alleviate some of the pain in their process of, providing for their loved one. And so the common theme of it all is just being of service, and to be able to have the opportunity to do that is incredible. And how not only being of service to our patients, but how the provider community seems to be very open and supportive thus far. The ones that we have met, yourself included. We met another group of ladies who are sisters, nurses in Deltona, who had received a referral that was a little too far in geography from them, and they referred them to us. And so we're going through the process of evaluating whether or not we can, be of service to that patient. And so slow and steady
wins the race.
Definitely win the race. And it was definitely slow. It was definitely not without challenge or struggle, but to see that you're constantly learning with all the success that you've had at your level, with all of the experience that you've had, and you're still learning. Like, I'm kind of a gung-ho, by any means necessary, just fly off by the seat of my pants person, so my partner tells me. But she is the very measured meticulous, calculated, watch every pitch go by and wait for the perfect one right down the middle and smack it out of the stadium. And so we balance one another.
That's wonderful.
And in our previous investing journey, that marriage has definitely helped us be successful. And I have no doubt that will help us be successful here. But the point I'm trying to make is there's no perfect plan. You can have the perfect plan, but without action, you have nothing. And it doesn't matter what level of experience you have. You can't learn and know everything. You kind of have to go forward and take the pitches as they come. No?
I would say that is almost accurate.
Okay.
Almost accurate.
You gotta try to plan.
Because as business owners, what we tend to do is to step out on faith. We're genuinely interested, and we're like, we could do this. We see the numbers. It's a great opportunity for us. However, what's not clear are the small details, are all that fine print is all these little details that are required. So for example, you mentioned you have now a connection to a regional office staff member that can help make those referrals. So one of the things I would encourage the provider community is to know who's whom in their regional offices so that they can connect to that person and get the information necessary. Because now placements for the residential settings are no longer done at the state office, they're done at the regional office. So you can let them know I'm officially open and I have beds available. There was an exercise before where we would have to send in census reports on a monthly basis. I'm not sure because I'm undergoing the licensing process at this time, so I'm not sure if it's still the case, but it's worth inquiring so that they can know that you have vacancies. So I would say first start there. Secondly, start with the waiver support coordinators. You provide a flyer or information on what you offer at your licensed facility and offer them a tour.
Yeah.
And that's because they're the ones that can share the information with the families that are on their wait list that's on the waiver. They could let them know, hey, this home has came available. This is, a place you may want to explore, or they can share that with the guardians of the individuals. Another thing that you may want to do is, because you're an assisted living facility, like I shared with you, the FACT team is another source, meaning they serve individuals with mental challenges or mental illnesses primarily. But most times they're duly diagnosed or they would have had a developmental disabilities that somehow they've flown under the radar, so it was never properly addressed. So to that end, they have funding too, where they can provide placements for an individual. Most times it's temporary, so that person can transition into your home and then transition out into the community. Most providers don't like the temporary stays because, of course, you're staffing the home. However, it helps with having or acquiring the revenue necessary to keep your doors open because you've spent all this money already. So at this point, you're just trying to stop the hemorrhaging. So that's a great way to go.
And you mentioned an acronym, the FACT team?
The FACT team, FACT team.
Oh, and that's just it. It doesn't stand for anything. That's just the name. Okay.
I've always known it as the FACT team, but I can send you the information. That's all I know about them. Okay. And I was recently introduced to them because I was literally surrendering my assisted living facility license. So I was like, well, I could have did something different there, But to that end, being in the different spaces that allow you to be introduced to other opportunities is what's necessary for any provider to survive. Even with me being knowledgeable and even being well known in the industry, you still have to prove that you could provide quality services. And sometimes that takes time. So I would like to encourage all providers, and I'm talking to myself first, don't despise small beginnings, because there's nothing like having that one individual in place to first help stop the hemorrhaging from your budget, right? And then secondly, so that you can refine your processes. Because we have this vision, we're like, okay, I'm gonna do this, this, and this, and especially my adult day training center. I was like, I have all these things going on in my head that I want to do. But with that one individual that came on board, he taught me that even with the disabilities, there's various levels. So you have to be able to accommodate that. So, different types of educational materials, different types of exposures, different types of, there's even an employer that I was building a relationship with because he would do an amazing job in terms of volunteering in that space. But that space provides so much stimuli for him. Standing in there was just like making him bananas. So we go there to shop and then we leave, But he taught me as an adult day training provider is that when we do our ratio assignments, it's not just the numbers that we're maintaining. We're making sure we have people that are good fits in their ratios, in their groups with their, the instructor versus their peers. And it's the same thing in a group home. Same thing. You have to have the right kind of chemistry. If not, you have one half of your population tearing up the group home, the other half eloping, or someone needing medical needs. And then let's say if you haven't received all the appropriate certifications, like to provide G2 feeding, you're not able to properly meet your client's needs. So starting slow allows you to really define what would be a good fit, what will be your workplace culture, because every facility has its own culture. So that's a part of being a provider. What is your culture? What is that going to look like? What does all this mean?
Yeah.
And so for me with Logistique Life Skills Center, here we focus on people that are wanting to go to work. So they pop in, do what they need to do for their hour and a half with an instructor. More importantly, they're out in the community. We're trying to make sure they have a job because that's what we get paid to do.
We got a shortage of labor all around. So
exactly.
It's like being able to prepare people to, serve themselves while also serving their community, and people who are often neglected and not looked in that way to be of service. It's a beautiful thing for you to be able to empower them with that ability.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So, and in that process, we learned not everybody wants to work. Right? They just want to have a good time. They just want to get away from the house, the group home, or wherever they are for like a few hours in a day. So that experience has to be meaningful. Not sitting them in front of a TV and saying, "Are you good?" No, they want to be out. They want to be engaged. They want to see things, as you mentioned earlier, or experience things that they had never experienced. So our challenge and our job is to give them those or offer those choices so that they can receive that exposure, and then that increases their quality of life. So I would say to the provider community, get engaged. Find an organization that offers a variety of things, and particularly free information. Free information. Secondly, when they start, take their time. Don't make sure you have a budget that supports you to sustain yourself for a period of 6 months for startup, and then 6 months thereafter. And if you don't have those kind of means, you may want to look into an investor. And I know that's hard. Get everything in writing. Make sure the ink dries on the dotted line. Make sure an attorney look it over. All of that.
What are some business structures that you think could work for individuals who need the partnership of an investor to help to sustain their business?
I definitely think a silent partner. Someone that has the extra capital. That say, here, I can, front you, let's say $50,000, and this will be the repayment model, and or this is what the return on investment would be or need to be. However, from the investor perspective, because I'm playing devil's advocate, not only does everything have to be in writing, but it needs to be clear on the timeline for that, because now you're a group home, assisted living facility provider, so you understand that the process is slow and steady. Right? So they can't get an immediate return on their investment. So you have to look at the models of how they can, in fact, receive. And it may be smaller increments at first, and then a biannual or annual, some type of, they use the term distribution and or some type of payment that says, here's a little something towards what you've invested in. And then have a bigger split at the end of the year or that neighboring year and annually thereafter, once the person starts to fill their facilities, whether it's a day program or whether it's a group home or assisted living facility, there's ways to get the funding. If you have good credit, you can always go to the bank and present your business plans, or your credit union. That's another option. But I will say, for me, I went the family investment route. Is that nerve-wracking? Absolutely. Because you have a vision, you know what you're doing, but it's expensive.
And it's more responsibility, because as a person who, acts in honor and integrity, not only are you chiefly concerned with, your own vision that you have, but now you've got these individuals that trust you, that put their faith in you and rely on you, and that just exponentially compounds the responsibility and the burden placed on your shoulders,
right,
with respect to that relationship that is so valuable.
Yes, that is definitely the case. So putting together a model so that they could see a clear return on their investment was key. So I would love to be a part of people that are interested in investing into other providers. I would like to be a part of, or have a seat at that table to help define those possibilities. At the end of the day, business will always be business. We're in an industry where it's a hard thing first. The reality is, you want to be able to make a profit. It's a business.
Yeah.
Right? So you have to be intentional about your design. You have to be intentional about your overhead. And then you have to be intentional about your work ethic, because saying here's $50,000 and you hand it to a person, are they truly going to take the time to do the research to understand if there's another facility within 1,000 foot first? Are they going to understand that if that facility requires a sprinkler system or not? Are they able to recruit staff? Are they able to do the job when there's no staff available? Are they able to work the business to save on money at up front?
Yeah.
Like, how dedicated are they going to be? So there needs to be an initial screening process, because it sounds good, but you have to roll up your sleeve. You know what I mean? And
yes,
sometimes you have to, change some bedding, wipe some butts, but you get it done. That's a part of the growth and helping you understand what you need. So when you start hiring staff, you can say, you can tell it in the interview. You already know, like, no, he's not a good fit, or she's not a good fit.
And that's why we haven't talked one bit about the income.
Okay.
Because I don't want people to come away from this conversation just focused on the earning potential and the income, because that's for another conversation. The beginning barrier that you've got to overcome is like your credibility as a business person, as a professional, as a good person. You don't want to be out here doing things for the wrong reason. And our story, we started in Airbnb, and it's a huge buzzword that's just, all over. And it's like the gold rush of the 21st century, right? And people have run to it for the wrong reasons, in my opinion, looking to get rich quick. And it's something that I find is a chance for people to be of service to others in a similar way, whether it's providing quality experiences, family getaways, or, servicing the grandson in town to help his grandmother with her hip replacement recovery process, or the traveling business professionals installing, fiber optic cables in the area, or families in need of a place to stay when, their home was decimated by hurricane, whatever one we're on right now.
Right.
We've had all of those experiences, and we've been doing it for 7 years now, and it's been about the people that we can help, not the money that we can make. The money is there. And so for individuals who've listened to this conversation and are, looking to be capital partners, but they don't know how to do that due diligence on the provider community and discern, whom is worth the investment, because they've, operated their business in a successful fashion, that need help and want to scale, how would they be able to work with you to figure out the connective tissue to meet a potential operator that they could work with, or if there are operators that are looking for additional funding or supports in different ways, would they be able to? Is Logistique Consulting Services, is that something that you provide assistance with?
In my perfect world, I would be an investor,
Okay.
but I have a ways to go before I can get there. So as we stand now in terms of the quality assurance consulting firm, what we do is train providers that are either interested in becoming a provider. I do the full-on process from beginning to end so that they can become a Medicaid waiver provider. And then once you become a provider, we provide supports in the home by way of doing like a 6-month quality assurance oversight model where we look at all the employee files, the client files, your medication files, and your facility requirements for licensed group homes. And if there's short-term training needs like related to the direct care staff, we also have a curriculum for them as well so that they can understand the why to what they do in hopes of improving their performance. But when it comes to the financial side, on a personal level, I would like to have a seat at the table with any investment group that's even considering that so that we can build a model, because I think it takes a meeting of the minds. Because some investors are like, listen, I need something where I'm in and out, in a matter of 3 to 5 years. So others are like, I'm good, so I can sit on this for 10 years. So it's going to take a specific conversation regarding that, because there needs to be a process of interviewing their potential. It's like applying for a loan. Literally, there needs to be an interviewing process, because they may not understand the industry, meaning they're willing to be a silent investor and say, hey, here's the money. I don't want to be in the throes of that. But you need to kind of know if that person has the wherewithal, or at least where it not be just a conversation. Like, can they actually accomplish this? And we're always taking a risk in business. That's a part of it, right? But there's certain people, I call it that it factor. You'll know. You just know when you talk to them. I met a young lady recently. She's a brand new provider licensing her first home. She was essentially duped by a consultant. That's all I'm going to say. Nicely stated. And she had to figure out everything, and it has taken all of her resources, and all she needed some working capital to hold her over until she can get that license and get her first client. Because again, once you have your license, as you indicated, it could be a while before you get your first referral, your first placement, because you're still trying to navigate which way to go, right? Or how to even get yourself out there from a marketing perspective. So if she had resources to sustain her for like the next 3 months, I really believe she's going to be an absolute phenomenal provider. She has no experience working with our population whatsoever. And she just had that it factor. When you have one conversation with her, you'll know. She is going to see it through. She is going to be committed. It will take her a bit of a learning curve to see what the culture of her facility will look like, because she doesn't have any working experience. And I don't know if that's your case as well. Did you work in the industry before you started your ALF?
So I did substitute teaching at the local high schools, middle schools, elementary schools. So I worked with the intellectual developmental disability population for quite some time. I want to say 5-6 years, and that was predominantly the student population that I worked with. It wasn't at the level of our current care that we provide in our 24-hour nursing facility, but it was enough for me when the idea was presented to me that we pivot into this business model by my partner. I was like, absolutely, that makes total sense.
Awesome. And the reason why I pose that question is because when you don't have any experience whatsoever, your vision on what will happen and the experience will absolutely not mirror one another, because each individual is unique. And like most times we try to put them in this beautiful mason jar and think, everyone can go on that same shelf, and that's not the case. Each individual has to be evaluated. You will have to look at, they talk about it and they call it person-centered planning, but truly it really is because they're all different, they're all unique. And if you don't have any experience, if you don't have the patience to get to know them, that is a recipe for disaster. And this is not a good industry for you. And that is not a good place for that investor to put their money.
And I don't even think it just stops at knowing the patient. It also starts at knowing yourself, knowing the staff that you've amassed. We actually recently just did personality tests for everyone in the home, so we could then sit down at our next team meeting and say, okay, so such and such displays this quality and, expresses themselves in this way. Well, okay, here's what, here's where this is coming from. So this is not a personal attack to you, and this is not an affront to your personality. It's just, we all have to be conscious of the way that we interact with one another as a staff, and then we can, have effective relationships not only with one another but with the patients that we're supposed to serve, and build that culture that you mentioned of inclusivity and
I concur. That's why I believe in the workplace having an open door policy. So with our staff, we bridged into exposing them to emotional intelligence training and development, so that they can take a closer look at themselves, because we serve the population in which we serve. If you're having a tough day, if things are going on at home and you want to be private about it, the larger your organization get, maybe you can have that resource right there on site. For us, we had a resource we had to eventually, because of how large the organization had become, where we had an on-site resource for our staff, but through the payroll company, they offer some type of so many sessions for free to our staff as well, to be able to navigate life challenges. And staff would be in a financial crunch most times, so we had an internal process where we would loan the staff money. We've even went as far as assisting them with securing transportation so that they can move or those types of things. But they had to come to us first and have the conversation, and that the outcome and the content we discuss remain private. And if there's anything where we need to drop a contract where they can pay us back in small increments, that's what we put in place. Because the culture of the homes and the facility is one thing, but the workplace culture is another too. So they have to, it's been my experience that when you create a family environment, you're more likely to create loyalty and longevity and retention. If you have staff there that's come and do their job and going home, they're going to do just that. And do their job and go home. And then nowadays, folks are married to their phones or technology, that you're praying that they're doing their job when they're on the clock, right? So it's about creating an environment where the expectations are clear, but a work environment where they understand that you all are a workplace family. Without that, I will say it's hard to sustain yourself within this industry, because life is happening. And then we get to work, and then this person that has an intellectual or developmental disability or some other neighboring disability, and they're having a tough day too, because they're just sick of sitting in the house all day. And they may not be able to articulate that in a way that we can understand it, either through words or gestures, so that's why it's important for us to have different ways, that they can request to leave, whether there's a chart or something they can point to be able to communicate to us what their needs are. And then the staff will come in, so everybody's had a bad day, and then they engage with one another, and that is a recipe for disaster. And then now you have a whole incident report going on, the staff going to the hospital, clients going to the hospital, law enforcement is there, and then you pray to God that you're not on the news. So it's important to take care of your staff equally as the individuals you were serving. And I know as an employer that sounds like an oxymoron, but it's a necessity.
Not only for not being on the news, but it's a necessity for the long-term vision that you have for your business, right? We started out in this space with zero experience, zero medical backgrounds, what have you, and just from the sharing of our small successes in the other areas of our business operations, we were building credibility with those in our network and those that weren't in our network, owning the story and the vision that we had for our business with new relationships that we were able to form helped us, be in a position to leverage them for success moving forward. And
Nice.
be that our head of nursing that came from a whole nother city, moved their family, right,
Wow.
to come join us. Our new, our head CNA moving her family from Miami to come join us.
Wow.
Our current staff members now, we've got our staff really solid. And I want to say 2 of our CNAs are finishing up school for LPN school, and LPNs are non-existent. They're hard to find. They're traveling and getting buku bucks. And so when you talk about building that family environment and the culture, it's imperative for the success that your business wants to have, to getting to however many number of patients served, however many number of facilities opened, or what have you. And so we're in the infancy of getting to where we want to go, but I can feel the traction beginning to take hold and the train moving down the tracks.
That is awesome to hear. That is wonderful to hear. And having a dedicated team is half the battle. Building the infrastructure to support the different needs is the other half. I think if you have the capital. If not, then there's something else that need to be added to the equation.
The capital piece is huge, because we came in early on, we were like, okay, we're going to do a whole different business model. We're going to have that 6-12 months reserves because we don't know what the heck is going on.
Right.
It's like, we're willing to float this business. Like, we still have yet to make a profit, and we're just like, okay, we signed up for this, but we got our staff secured solid.
That's wonderful.
And they're invested, right? We helped them solve problems. One of our staff members came all the way from Daytona Beach and was traveling to work. She was like, I really love you guys. I want to stay here. I got to move closer.
Aww.
My partner's a realtor. We ended up finding them a place to be able to stay.
That's
so
awesome.
We're using all of the experiences that we have from the other areas of our professional development to be of service to the people that are serving us and serving our patients. And so it's just like this huge wheel, this huge circle that's just connected together. And for them to, see in our vision future opportunities that, they can believe in and invest in and, be part of, that's a beautiful thing.
That is wonderful. It's wonderful to hear. And in my humble opinion, with all my experience in the industry, you're on track. And you may not have seen a profit quite yet, but if you're able to slow down the hemorrhaging, then that means you've made significant progress, because securing the facilities or the real estate, whether you mortgage it or rent it, is one thing. Then you have the furnishing that needs to happen, the insurances, then transportation associated with that facility, and then that insurance requirement. And then there's food. And then they can apply for food stamps if they're being served under the Medicaid waiver. Under the assisted living facility, they can.
Okay.
They can, depending on their funding source and how in which they're able to reside in your facility. So it's just a matter of navigating those different rules to help offset some of those costs associated with caring for an individual, especially their daily meals and then their snacks, and then any other recreational activities that they have. So there is a lot of overhead when you open these facilities, but I will say once you put the infrastructures in place, you will see a return on your investment, and a great one at that. It's just a matter of staying the course. As a provider, understanding the resources available to you or finding them. Because you can't just lay there and be like, oh, the referrals are going to land at my door. That is not happening. Not happening. You got to go get it. People need to learn who you are. They need to understand why you exist type thing. And again, you have to do the work. If you're not willing to do the work, this is not the right industry for you. Can it be lucrative? Absolutely. As an investor, can you see a wonderful return on your investment? Absolutely. Absolutely. But you have to be able to do the work.
Well, I think this is a part of the work, having the conversation around all the different angles and components. And I appreciate you taking the time to have that conversation with me today. Where can viewers, listeners reach out if they are in need of support in their current existing operator and they don't know the nuances of how they can maybe add services or pivot in their business model to sustain their business and grow their business? How can they reach out to you?
I do have a website, www.logistiqueconsulting.com. And I can provide you with my business card if you want to add that to it. And through that chat feature, it allows them to contact me, and then I follow up with them accordingly. Most times the providers just have like a clarifying question. So I don't mind giving them a call and answering those questions. And there's other times where they need like a full-on, I need you to come see what's going on, or I have a situation, because I am considered like the Olivia Pope of the industry. I kind of dive in and kind of help them navigate and understand that they really do have a situation. Yeah. And then if they're able to do damage control prior to it becoming so much more, then a part of what I do is help them strategize to try to put the fire out. And then most times I'm just straight up honest with you, like, you really do have a situation. So sometimes you just have to throw yourself on the sword and own it. Yeah. And have that follow up with the regional office, and prayerfully they can hear you and they have the ability to see it from a different perspective, because they have a job too, and maintaining compliance is one of them. So I'm that person. So yes, you can reach me through my website. I also have a phone number with administrative support staff, 727-370 4168, I believe, is the phone number. And then Miss Kelly could assist you with getting in contact with me. So that's kind of like the ways in which you can get in contact with me. I sit on the board of Empower Florida, so if they reach out through that vehicle, I can then follow up, either utilizing that platform and or mine, and then report back to the board that I followed up with the individual accordingly, because we do that as well. I am a full-time consultant too, and I think there's one more consultant, like official consultant on the board, but otherwise we are all providers. So we will do our best to help them navigate and, take forth and do great things, because it's all about being of service. When it comes to funding, that's usually not a conversation that I've seen people just have and say, these are some different avenues you could explore. Yeah. So I'll take this information back to the board and see how, or if they would like to tackle this. If not in one of our forthcoming webinars, maybe we could have it at one of the sessions at the 2024 conference in May. So there's time for us to work on that and try to pull together the different funding sources. I don't know if an organization has ever done that.
I believe, considering the changing dynamics around some of the policies that are rolled out yesterday and needed to be implemented tomorrow, with the knowledge that you have of individuals who are doing this for the right reasons and the membership of Empower Florida, there was a tremendous webinar session where you helped individuals wrap their minds around the new funding sources that were provided during COVID to help them be more competitive with pay rates and with furthering education for staff members and buying different products that the business needed or what have you. Right. That was state funding. That's one arm of other potential solutions that can help the provider community be more buoyant in this ever-changing sea that is what we do.
Yes, and that was a great opportunity for the provider community, if I may just highlight that. The fact that ARPA, which is the American Rescue Plan Act, I believe, provided such concessions to our provider community was beyond words. It was priceless. Because it came with some pretty stringent regulations, it's not navigating that. It was more of assisting them in navigating how to make sure they ensure compliance, right? And I believe sources like that is needed more regularly than not, because having $500,000 or an additional $100,000 added to their budget was so amazing for the provider community. It was a workload for the owner-operators. It really was. But having access to funds to help float payroll, to give bonuses, to do something special like purchase a vehicle for the staff to be able to come to and from work. Because back in the day, we paid for Uber rides, or we would send staff to go pick a person up. That those funds afforded them that opportunity. So the enhanced funding opportunity, I think, was a major success in terms of the springboard it gave the provider communities to be able to bounce back from enduring all things that occurred during the pandemic. Yeah.